Keeping up with AI, it feels like a full-time job these days, doesn't it? So think of this as your, like, fast track, your cheat sheet to what's happening over at OpenAI.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not talking small steps here. This is potentially a big shift, especially if you're, someone who actually builds with AI or even just fascinated by how it's all evolving.
Exactly. We've been digging deep into, the latest that OpenAI has been putting out there, those developer deep dives they've got on YouTube, plus all the details buried in their Agents SDK docs, all to boil it down for you. Basically, this is your curated guide to understanding their new audio models, this whole voice agent thing they're pushing, and the big upgrades they've made to their Agents SDK.
Yeah, so our mission really is to pull out the truly significant insights about these new tools. We're talking about how they're going to empower developers to build some seriously intelligent applications, and honestly, how this could change, like fundamentally change, how we all interact with AI every day.
For sure.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Voice agents, it sounds, kind of futuristic, maybe a bit sci-fi, but OpenAI is clearly betting big on this. What's driving this focus on voice, you think?
Well, I think what's really interesting to consider is just how natural voice is for us, right? I mean, it's how we communicate, how we connect with each other and the world. And OpenAI is recognizing that huge potential for AI to, well, meet us where we are in a way that's just inherently comfortable for us through spoken language.
Right, yeah.
It's about moving beyond those limitations we've had with text-based interfaces.
It makes total sense when you think about it. We talk to our devices all the time anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what is a voice agent exactly? Give us the quick definition.
So in simple terms, a voice agent is an AI system that's designed to actually perform actions for you on your behalf. And it does this all through voice commands and responses. You just talk to it, have a conversation, and the AI handles the rest. No more typing, no more clicking. Imagine like a customer support system that actually understands you and responds naturally, like a real person. Or think about a language tutor that can listen to your pronunciation and give you real-time feedback, all conversationally.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here. But how do you actually build something like that? I mean, is it super complex?
That's a key question. And OpenAI has actually laid out a couple of main approaches, architectural patterns that developers are using right now. The first one, which they see as a very practical way to get started, is something they call a chained architecture.
Chained architecture. Okay, tell me more.
So picture it as a sequence of three distinct components. First, you've got speech to text, or STT. This is where a model takes your spoken words and it transcribes them into text. Then in this chain, next up is the large language model, or LLM, a powerful model like GPT-4o, for example. This is what takes that text, understands what you mean, and then generates a response, an answer, or maybe even an instruction. But it does this in text form. And then finally, you've got text-to-speech, or TTS, which is what takes that text response and turns it back into, well, natural-sounding audio that you can hear.
Got it. So you're basically breaking down this whole voice interaction into these separate steps, these manageable steps.
Exactly.
What are the advantages of doing it this way?
Well, there are some big benefits. One is it's really modular. You have a lot of flexibility as a developer. You can choose the absolute best model for each specific task in this chain. Maybe you need the most accurate STT out there, but you're okay with a faster, maybe slightly less expressive TTS.
Uh-huh.
This kind of architecture lets you do that. Then secondly, it really leverages the current state of text-based LLMs, which are already quite mature and reliable. Speech-to-speech models are getting there, definitely improving fast, but for now, those text models they're often the peak of AI understanding and reasoning. And then the third benefit is that it's just a much easier on-ramp for developers. If you've already built, say, a text-based agent, you can basically just add an STT module at the beginning, the input, and then a TTS module at the end, the output, and boom, you've essentially got yourself a voice-enabled version.
Right, that sounds pretty efficient. And OpenAI, they've actually rolled out some new models that are specifically optimized for this kind of chained approach, haven't they?
Exactly. They've announced GPT-4o Transcribe and GPT-4o Mini Transcribe. Those are for that crucial speech-to-text stage. And then GPT-4o Mini TTS for, you guessed it, the text-to-speech conversion.
Okay, so that's the chained approach. What's the other main method for building voice agents that they're highlighting? You mentioned something more integrated, right?
That's right. That's the speech-to-speech approach, or what's sometimes called a multimodal architecture. Think of it more like how our brains work, where we're processing both the words someone is saying and their tone of voice all at the same time, rather than as separate pieces of information. So in this approach, you've got a single, more advanced model, something like GB240 real-time preview, that can directly take audio as input and then produce audio as output.
Okay.
All in real time. There's no intermediate text representation in the same way.
Got it. So that sounds much more direct.
It is.
What are the upsides of going with this tighter integration?
Well, what's really exciting here is the potential for incredibly low latency. I mean, this can lead to a much more fluid, much more natural back and forth conversation. And because the model's handling, audio and text in a unified way, it can develop this much richer understanding, even pick up on subtle cues in a person's tone of voice, maybe even infer emotions.
Okay, yeah.
This makes it really well suited for those highly interactive, low latency applications, like think of real-time language tutoring or even conversational search where you want that super seamless back and forth.
Okay, so two distinct strategies for bringing voice to AI agents. Let's dive into these new audio models themselves. I said they're state of the art. What makes them so special? Let's start with the speech-to-text capabilities.
All right, so with speech-to-text, we've got GPT-4o Transcribe and GPT-4o Mini Transcribe. These are the latest and greatest. They're built on this vastly expanded speech model that OpenAI has trained on a truly massive data set. We're talking trillions of audio tokens.
Trillions.
Yeah, trillions. Think of tokens as the fundamental building blocks of language and audio that the AI learns from. It's a lot of data. And this massive training, along with some architectural improvements, allows these new models to just outperform the previous whisper models across a wide range of languages.
Trillions of tokens. That really gives you an idea of the scale.
It does.
So how do they actually measure this improvement in transcription quality? What's the benchmark?
So the standard metric everyone uses in this field is word error rate, or WER. Basically, it represents the percentage of words that the model gets wrong during transcription.
Right.
So a lower WER score means higher accuracy. And the data OpenAI has shown, it demonstrates a pretty significant reduction in WER for these new models compared to Whisper and even other commercially available options.
That's impressive. Accuracy is obviously crucial for any voice agent to actually be useful, right?
Absolutely.
What about the cost? I mean, are these top-tier models going to be, like, super expensive for developers to integrate?
That's a good question. GPT-4L Transcribe is priced at 0.06 per minute of audio, which is actually the same as the original Whisper model. However, they've also introduced GPT-4o Mini Transcribe, which is even more affordable, at just $0.03 per minute.
Half of the price.
Exactly. So this gives developers a couple of options at different price points, high performance options depending on their specific needs.
That's great. That makes this technology much more accessible. Are there any other, like, notable enhancements on the STT side?
Oh yeah, they've also significantly enhanced the API with robust streaming capabilities. So now developers can just feed continuous audio into the model and get back a continuous stream of transcribed text.
Uh-huh.
This is really crucial for those responsive real-time voice applications. They've also addressed some of the common challenges, things like background noise. They have built-in noise cancellation now to filter that out. And there's this cool new feature called semantic voice activity detection. What this does is it can intelligently figure out when a user has finished speaking, which helps developers process complete utterances more effectively. And these improvements are actually available in both their standard SDT API and the real-time API.
Wow. Sounds like they've really thought through the practicalities of working with voice. Okay, let's move to the other end of that change architecture, the text-to-speech side. What's new and exciting with TTS from OpenAI?
So they've introduced GPT-4ao Mini TTS. And the big innovation here, it's not just about, generating speech from text. It's the level of control developers now have over how that speech is delivered. You can now instruct the model not only on what to say, but on how to say it.
Okay.
You can control the tone, the speaking rate, even the emotion.
Control the emotion through prompting. That's a big step forward, isn't it? How does that actually work?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's all driven by the instructions you give in your prompt. You can give the model very specific guidance on how you want the speech delivered. Imagine prompting it to speak with the excitement of a sports commentator or maybe the calm, reassuring voice of a therapist.
Uh-huh.
To showcase this, they actually launched a fun website called OpenAI.fm.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw something about this. It had, different voices, like a movie trailer announcer and stuff, right?
That's the one. They've got a bunch of preset prompts, but you can also type in your own text and your own instructions for how you want it spoken. And the site even shows you code snippets, Python, JavaScript, curl, so developers can quickly see how to integrate this into their own projects. They're even running a creative challenge to encourage people to really explore all the innovative possibilities of this new TTS tech.
That's awesome. That's a great way to get developers experimenting.
It is.
What about what's the pricing like for this expressive TTS?
Very affordable. It's only $0.01 per minute of generated audio. So, quite accessible for developers to add this high quality, emotionally nuanced speech to their applications.
That's really good. Okay, so we have these powerful audio models, but how does it all actually come together in the development process? That's where the Agents SDK comes in, right?
Right.
I heard there were some specific enhancements for voice.
You heard right. The Agents SDK, which they introduced recently to make it easier to build those reliable text-based agents, has now been significantly enhanced to make it even simpler to take those text agents and convert them into voice-enabled agents,
Okay.
especially when you're using that chain architecture we talked about earlier.
So what are the specific things in the SDK that make this transition from text to voice so smooth?
They've introduced this concept called the voice pipeline within the SDK. It's basically a streamlined three-step process. First, you feed in audio, and the SDK just handles the speech-to-text conversion for you automatically. Then your existing agent, workflow, your code, your logic, all the interactions with LLMs that processes the resulting text. And then finally, the SDK takes the text output from your agent and automatically uses TTS to generate the spoken response.
Yeah, so it's taking care of a lot of the underlying complexity, making it much easier to add voice capabilities to existing agents.
Exactly. They even showed how you could convert like a text-based customer support agent into a voice interactive version with like just a few lines of code. It's really powerful and convenient.
That's super efficient. What about debugging? Building these voice agents, it seems like that could introduce some new challenges when you're trying to troubleshoot things.
Oh, definitely. And they've thought of that. The tracing UI, which is part of the Agents SDK, that's what helps developers visualize and debug the flow of their agents. Well, that's been updated to fully support audio. So now, right in the tracing interface, you can actually play back the audio input and output at each step, along with all the usual metadata, timelines, all that. It makes it much easier to figure out what's going on if there's a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a big help. Are there any specific installation steps that developers need to take to get access to all this, to these voice features in the SDK?
Yep. When they're installing the Agents SDK with pip, they can now include the voice dependencies by running the command pip install OpenAI Agents voice. This makes sure they have all the necessary pieces for building voice-enabled agents. They even provide a simple example called single agent voice workflow within the voice pipeline, just to help developers get started quickly.
Okay, so the Agents SDK is clearly a major step forward for building voice agents, but it's also useful beyond just voice applications, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot more than just voice. It's really meant to be this robust, production-ready successor to their earlier Swarm framework. The Agents SDK is intended for building all sorts of agentic AI applications, not just one that use voice. It gives you this foundational set of building blocks for creating really intelligent, autonomous systems.
Such as, what are the core elements, the primitives that the SDK provides?
So at the heart of it, the SDK revolves around three key concepts. You have agents themselves, which are essentially LLMs that you configure with specific instructions and equip with tools they can use. Then you've got handoffs, which allow you to build more sophisticated workflows by letting agents delegate tasks to other, maybe more specialized agents within your system. And then finally, you have guardrails, which are really important for safety and reliability. They validate user inputs, prevent your agents from doing anything unintended or harmful.
So you can create these networks of agents, these interconnected networks that can intelligently distribute tasks, all while maintaining safety through these guardrails.
Exactly.
That's super powerful and flexible. What are some of the other notable features, capabilities of the SDK?
Well, it's got a built-in agent loop, which takes care of that often repetitive process of invoking tools, feeding the results back to the LLM, and just iterating until the agent achieves what it's trying to do. It's also designed with a Python-first approach. It leverages familiar Python language features for orchestration. So, if you're a Python developer, it's very accessible.
Okay.
A particularly useful feature is that you can easily turn any standard Python function into a tool that your agent can use. And the SDK even automatically generates the necessary interface specifications for you. And of course, as we mentioned, there's that integrated tracing UI for monitoring and debugging. Plus, it allows you to orchestrate multiple agents in quite complex and nuanced ways.
And I remember hearing that it's not limited to just using OpenAI's models, right? You can potentially use models from other providers as well.
Yeah, that's a huge plus for developers who need that flexibility. It can work with models from other vendors as long as their API is compatible with, the general structure of chat completion APIs. And the way you enable this is you can actually configure the base URL within the SDK to point to the API endpoint of that third-party provider. They even specifically mentioned a Llama as an example, which lets you run local model like Llama or DeepSeek R1 on your own hardware and integrate them seamlessly with the Agents SDK.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you can have these fully local and private AI agents.
That's a huge advantage for developers who, need more control over their infrastructure or maybe have strict data privacy requirements.
Absolutely.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, OpenAI also announced this new Responses API alongside all of this. What's the purpose of this new API? Why is it important?
So the Responses API, it's essentially a more versatile, more powerful way to handle those really intricate agentic workflows, especially when you have multiple turns of conversation and you're using different tools. It's kind of a unified primitive that can handle different modalities, text, images, audio, and it integrates really well with the new built-in tools they've introduced.
Built-in tools within the API.
Yep, built in.
That's pretty convenient. What kind of functionalities are we talking about?
Okay, so they've launched three main ones. First, you've got web search, which lets your agents access up-to-date info from the internet. This is actually powered by a fine-tuned version of GPT-4o or Mini.
Okay.
Then there's file search, which allows you to do semantic searches across documents you've uploaded with some cool new features like many data filtering and a direct search endpoint. And then the third one, which is probably the most noteworthy, is computer use. This is basically the operator functionality we've seen in ChatGPT, but now directly in the API.
Computer use. Remind me, what exactly can Operator do within ChatGPT?
Right. So Operator, now the computer use tool, is a system that can actually interact with and control computer operating systems, web browsers. It can automate tasks on those graphical user interface applications,
Okay.
even if there aren't direct APIs available. And it does this by analyzing the screen pixels and then simulating human interactions like, mouse clicks and keyboard input.
That's incredible. I mean, just think of the potential for automating all sorts of tasks. So this is now available for developers to build into their own agent applications.
Exactly. It's powered by this model internally, they call it QA, the computer using agent, and it's built on top of GPT-4o. It's been specifically trained to understand and interact with computer interfaces. Think about use cases like automating processes on websites, like making reservations online, filling out those complex web forms, even interacting with older software, legacy software that doesn't have modern APIs.
Yeah. Okay. That's incredibly powerful. But it also seems like there could be, some concerns about safety. Like, what if it does something unintended? You don't want an AI just randomly clicking around and causing problems.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Safety has been a huge priority for them in developing this tool. They've got multiple layers of protection. There are mechanisms to prevent the agents from doing harmful or inappropriate tasks. They've got moderation models to filter out, unsuitable requests. They're constantly monitoring for attempts at prompt injection. And really importantly, they require user confirmation for actions that could have real-world consequences, like, say, initiating a financial transaction.
Okay, that's good. Those safety measures are definitely reassuring. And how well does this koala model actually perform? I mean, is it reliable enough for real-world use?
They've shown some benchmarks from evaluations like OS World, which tests an agent's ability to navigate, operating system interfaces, and then Web Arena, which assesses how well AI agents can interact with websites to achieve specific goals. While Quada did score higher than other publicly reported results for similar AI agents, it's still not quite at human-level performance in these complex tasks, so there's definitely room for improvement. However, the early feedback from developers who've tried it out has been really positive.
Okay, that makes sense. This computer use tool is definitely one of the most eye-catching announcements for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree.
What about the future of the Assistance API? I know a lot of developers are using that right now for building agent-like applications.
Yeah, and that's an important point for a developer to keep in mind. OpenAI has said that the Responses API will eventually have all the functionality of the Assistance API. They're going to provide a migration guide to make it a smooth transition for developers who have built things using the Assistance API. They're planning to sunset the Assistance API sometime in 2026, so if you're using that, start thinking about that migration. But the good news is that the Chat Completions API, the core one that many developers rely on, will continue to be supported.
Okay, so the Responses API is the way forward for building those more advanced agentic capabilities. Looking at the big picture here, all of these new audio models, the enhancements to the SDK, the API, it all points towards a future where these AI agents are much more capable and just seamlessly integrated into our lives. What are OpenAI's thoughts on where this is all headed?
They're very clear in their belief that agents represent a big transformative trend in the future of AI. They see systems that can act autonomously, accomplish tasks for us, potentially leading to huge increases in productivity and fostering creativity in all sorts of areas. They think these advancements will lead to real improvements in customer service, personalized education, more natural and inclusive interactions with tech, and just widespread automation of routine tasks, the things that take up our time.
Yeah, it really feels like we're at the beginning of a major shift in how we interact with AI.
It does.
And OpenAI seems to be putting themselves right at the forefront of this.
Yeah.
They even highlighted 2025 as a potentially pivotal year for the advancement and adoption of agents.
That's right. It's not just about AI as an information provider anymore. It's about AI actually doing things in the real world to help us. And these audio capabilities, these enhanced tools in the SDK and API, they're essential building blocks for that.
Okay, let's recap. What are the main takeaways for our listeners from this deep dive into OpenAI's announcements?
Okay, the key things to remember are that OpenAI is making some really big strides in giving developers the tools to build these more sophisticated, more natural AI agents. We've got those state-of-the-art audio models, both speech-to-text and text-to-speech, that offer better accuracy, more control, and they're more affordable. The Agents SDK is now much easier to use for building voice agents with that voice pipeline we talked about. And then there's that powerful Responses API with its built-in tools like web search, file search, and that groundbreaking computer use capability, which opens up a whole world of automation possibilities. And then finally, the Agents SDK itself, it's this robust, flexible framework for building all sorts of agentic applications, and it supports models from different providers, including local options.
It's a lot to take in, but it's so exciting to think about the implications. This could change not just how developers build things, but how we all interact with AI. It's not just a passive assistant anymore. It can actually work for us.
It really leads to a pretty fundamental question for everyone listening, I think. How will this increasing ability for AI to understand and generate natural sounding speech and then to actually act on our instructions, how will that change our relationship with technology, with the world around us? It's something to really think about.
Yeah, a lot to ponder for sure. If our listeners want to explore these new tools, get into the nitty-gritty details, where should they go?
The best place is the OpenAI developer documentation. They've got docs for the Agents SDK, the Audio API, and the Responses API. You'll find everything you need there, guides, tutorials, all the technical specs. And I would also highly recommend checking out openai.fm just to experience that new TTS model firsthand. It's a fun way to see how far expressive speech generation has come.
That's a great tip. It really feels like we're seeing a huge leap forward in AI agents. Thanks so much for walking us through all this. It's clear that OpenAI is unlocking some truly transformative possibilities here. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on all of this. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Stay tuned for more explorations into the ever-evolving, always fascinating world of AI.